everybody about grab their seats? Ready? It's officially 8:30. Got a couple quick announcements. Hi, my name's Ron. I'm an alcoholic. Hey, welcome everybody. Have a good one. Really important, real quick here, we'll give a couple announcements. Please be mindful that we're not allowed to smoke anywhere on the church property. Please don't leave no butts there. They give us the keys to a $10 million facility, so just respect it and take care of it. So be mindful of that. It's important to know that our food and fellowship does start at 8 p.m. So, if you want good eats, get here early, right? Every man for himself. We usually got a ton of stuff though. It's a lot of fun. It's really important to know that we have a Facebook page for the Conscious Contact Speaker Group of Doylestown. Please become a member of that. You'll not only be able to see what we have going on from week to week in our workshops and things we do, but also all kinds of other things in AA going on all over the place. They're posted there. There's picnics. There's workshops. If you're ever bored in AA, I mean, and we post speakers in there. There's so many things that are about recovery, and that's what this group is about carrying a message of hope and recovery. So our chairperson, Tara, is going to come up here tonight. Relax, sit in. Tara, please.
Welcome to the Conscious Contact Speaker Group of Alcoholics Anonymous. My name is Tara, and I'm an alcoholic. This is a 1-hour speaker meeting that meets every Saturday evening at St. Paul's Lutheran Church, 301 North Main Street at 8:30 p.m. in Doylestown, PA. The business meeting for this group meets every Saturday at 7 to 7:30 p.m. right here. The purpose of the group is to provide a consistent message of hope and recovery through God reliance and service to others through the practice and teaching of the 12 steps. We record all speakers so that others may benefit from the message of recovery. If you wish not to be recorded, please ask. This is an open meeting of Alcoholics Anonymous. The group would like to welcome everyone, especially newcomers. Is there anyone new or from out of town who would like to introduce themselves with their first name? Hi, Joey.
Ace from New York.
Hey, Ace.
Andrew, alcoholic.
Hi, Andrew.
Nick, alcoholic.
Hi, Nick. Anyone else? The Conscious Contact Speaker Group encourages sponsorship. Would anyone with working knowledge of the 12 steps who is willing to sponsor, please raise your hand. So take a look around the room, everybody who's new or who might just need a sponsor. These are the people who are willing and able to sponsor you. Are there any announcements for the good of AA? Nobody? We have meeting lists and big books on easy terms. Please see me or any home group member after the meeting. If you cannot afford a big book, the Conscious Contact Speaker Group will give you one at no charge. Anyone willing to make donations for the purchase of big books and CDs to help those who can't afford them can put donations in the jar on the table marked Big Book and CD donations. If you would like a CD of any speaker, past or present, see me or Ron before or after the meeting. They are available free of charge. And now Nick will read the AA preamble.
Good evening, my name is Nick, I'm an alcoholic. Today, preamble, Alcoholics Anonymous is a fellowship of men and women who share their experience, strength, and hope with each other that they may solve their common problem and help others to recover from alcoholism. The only requirement for membership is a desire to stop drinking. There are no dues or fees for AA membership. We are self-supporting through our own contributions. AA is not allied with any sect, denomination, politics, organization, or institution. Does not wish to engage in any controversy. Neither endorses nor opposes any causes. Our primary purpose is to stay sober and help other alcoholics to achieve sobriety. I've asked Rich to come up and read the 12 steps.
Hi, I'm Rich. I'm an alcoholic. Hey, guys. One, we admitted we were powerless over alcohol, that our lives had become unmanageable. 2, came to believe that a power greater than ourselves could restore us to sanity. 3, made a decision to turn our will and our lives over to the care of God as we understood Him. 4, made a searching and fearless moral inventory of ourselves. 5, admitted to God, to ourselves, and to another human being the exact nature of our wrongs. 6, we're entirely ready to have God remove all these defects of character. 7, humbly asked Him to remove our shortcomings. 8, made a list of all persons we had harmed and became willing to take amends to them all. 9, made direct amends to such people wherever possible, except when to do so would injure them or others. 10, continued to take personal inventory, and when we were wrong, promptly admitted it. 11, sought through prayer and meditation to improve our conscious contact with God as we understood Him, praying only for His knowledge of His will for us and His power to carry that out. 12, having had a spiritual awakening as a result of these steps, we tried to carry this message to alcoholics and to practice these principles in all our affairs.
Thanks for reading.
The seventh tradition. Every AA group ought to be fully self-supporting, declining outside contributions. At this time, I would like someone else to pass the basket. We have no dues or fees, but we have expenses. This group provides many services. Your donations cover rent, big books, CDs, events, and workshops, etc. There is absolutely no smoking on church property. Please take a moment to silence all cell phones and limit movement during the meeting to avoid distractions. Now I'd like to introduce our speaker for tonight. Her name is Doreen L. She's a very good friend of the Conscious Contact Speaker Group. She's come all the way from the Roosevelt 12 and 12 in York, PA.
I'm short. Hi everyone, my name's Doreen Lear. I'm an alcoholic. My sobriety date's August 9th of 98, and I do belong to the Roosevelt 12 and 12 group in York, PA. We meet on Wednesday evenings at 8 p.m. It is a speaker and tradition meeting. And I'd like to thank Ron for asking me to come here and share my experience, strength, and hope with you. I'd like to thank my husband Joseph for driving us here. We got here quickly. And I'd like to also thank my friend Jeanette for coming and traveling to Doylestown with us. So I think all that's out of the way. I have a sponsor. My sponsor has been the same sponsor for 20 years. I have women that I sponsor and place the hand of their hand into the God of their own understanding. I do not own them. They are not mine. I have no control over what they do, because if I did, I'd be crazy and you wouldn't be seeing me stand here tonight and talk to you. So, I am not the person that came in the rooms August 9th, 1998. I will share that person. I know her story, but I am no longer that woman that I brought to the rooms of Alcoholics Anonymous. I didn't even bring her to the rooms of Alcoholics Anonymous. My brother did, and I'll share that with you. I was born and raised in South Baltimore, Maryland. That's where I grew up. You know, we grew up in a row home, 3-story row home. You know, we were pretty much, I guess, I don't like to class us anymore because I believe we were exactly where we were supposed to be. You know, my dad was the drunk in the home. My mom, you know, she did the best she could. I'm the youngest of 8. God bless her. I had 3, and that's why I drank. No. I used to tell you that was why I drank. But if you had kids like mine, you drink too. You know. But my mom, you know, raised I only remember the last 3 of us living in the home because the rest of them, you know, right out of high school into a marriage. So I'm going to share a lot of the principles that I saw growing up. You know, I don't know right from wrong at that point. You know, I just knew that's what you're supposed to do. So, you know, I got right out of high school and went right into a marriage because that's what I thought you were supposed to do. And, you know, my dad, he was the type of drunk that was, he was an early drunk. You know, he'd get off work at 5, he'd be at the bar till about 8 or 9, and then he'd come home. And we all stood in fear, as I could see it today, of what was going to come through that door. You know, my dad was the type of, I can say that he's an alcoholic because he admitted it. He admitted that one time in one of my brother's anniversaries. My brother has 4 years prior to me coming in, so I watched that man grow up in Alcoholics Anonymous, and I saw a change in him which became an attraction to me. Because, you know, he avoided me, and I gained resentment. I didn't know what a resentment was when I got here, but he avoided me because he didn't want to be around the drinking, and I respect that today, but I disrespected him back then. Because you know, he used to be my drinking buddy. Like, all my drinking buddies were like, coming to AA. You know, and I wasn't an alcoholic yet, so it was like, well, go have your fun not drinking. You know, so my dad was the drunk. You know, as soon as his hand hit the doorknob, we froze. Because we weren't quite sure what was coming through that front door. It was either, you know, he was going to be restless, irritable, and discontent, or he was going to be happy, joyous, and free. So we didn't know until he got there. You know, we were the type of children is we didn't act until he reacted. So we waited. And my dad loved to throw things and flip tables, and my brother got the physical abuse mostly because I don't ever remember him laying a hand on any of us girls. Till one time when I was 18, I mouthed him and he did slap me in the face. That surprised me because he never put his hands on me before that. But I remember just waiting in fear. It was like the blood would rush through you because you didn't know what was coming through that front door. And I remember a couple of times, you know, we sit at the kitchen table, wait, and we had to wait till, you know, dinner time. He would sit down and eat, and then we would eat. And sometimes it was like you had to grab your plate because you could say something to him like, you know, Dad, pass the butter. And what? And the table would go up in the air, and whatever you were eating would go on the wall or on the floor. So we got prone to like snatching our plate if we were going to eat that night, because if not, we were picking it off the wall on the floor. And that's just the childhood I remember. But as I look back in hindsight as a recovered woman of Alcoholics Anonymous, it really wasn't as extreme as I thought it was. Because see, I lived in the big book describes it, this drama of life. You know, I'm not saying it wasn't bad, but, you know, I remember him taking us to our grandmother's on the weekend and we could go swimming and stuff. See, I'd forget that stuff when, you know, I forget about the good times growing up because I was so focused on the negativity because all I lived, it was in murkiness and darkness. So I focused on that, and that was my life till I got to the rooms of Alcoholics Anonymous. So, you know, at the age of 18, you know, just like the rest of the sisters, that's what you do. You go right out of high school into a marriage. So I met a man in the bar. Where else would you meet him? You know, because my mother was a barmaid, my sister was a barmaid, my dad hung in the bar, my brother hung in the bar. So I was like, okay, you know, I hung in the bar. And I met my first husband, was a non-drinker. Scared me to death because I was like, what are you doing in a bar if you ain't drinking? You know, he'd have Sprite and he used to smoke Salem cigarettes. I could still see him sitting at the edge of that bar when I walked in the bar that day. And he used to love to shoot darts, so that was why he hung out in the bar, because he was a dart shooter. And I remember just, you know, we met, we went out. Oh, this is crazy. And I look back in hindsight, I'm like, you know, I like to say that, you know, I went out of high school into a marriage because I like to say the gynecologist made that decision for me because, you know, it was the first time I ever had physical sex with anybody. And I remember I went to go get birth control and they were like, well, you don't need it because you're 2 weeks pregnant. And I was like, okay. So I went home and told him, and I was like, the moral thing to do back in the day was you don't have a child out of wedlock. So we got married. We knew each other for about a year. You know, and I mean, I remember him dragging me out of bars. I mean, we would go out on dates, and he wasn't a dancer, and I'm a dancer, so it was like he'd sit in his chair, and I'd be dancing, and guys would come up and say, you know, do you mind if I dance with her? And he goes, no, not at all. his mistake. So it was kind of like, I get on the dance floor and he'd have to drag me off because he don't dance, I do. So these guys were just like, it's kind of like, as I say later on in my story, when I, right out of high school and into a marriage, had 3 kids by the time I was 24, because that's what I thought I was supposed to do, And I just remember him later on giving me these ultimatums, because he would drag me out of the bar. When he was ready to go, I was ready to go. If not, he'd take me whether I was ready to go. So he'd drug me over bar stools, and bouncers would get him and say, you can't do that to her. He'd drag me out of here, drag me out of there. And then I'd use that excuse, like, you met me in a bar. I mean, come on. You knew the way I drank. So shut up, and leave me alone. And so later on, the ultimatums started coming. He'd always say to me, we're going out, and when I'm ready to go and you're not ready to go, then you find your own way home. Well, I found my own way home that night, but it wasn't my home. It was somebody else's home, but it was home for the evening. I look back now, I'm like, God, she was so sick. She was so sick. And I had a lot of fun drinking. I did. Like I said, grew up around it. Birthday parties, baptisms, sunny days, rainy days, whatever day it was a good day to drink. So I didn't believe I was an alcoholic when I got here, because I wasn't a daily drinker when I came to you. I drank as often as I could for where the money would allow me to. Raising 3 kids and living on cutoffs, turnoffs, moving every 3 years. One of the benefits in hindsight, as my children tell me today, my 2 sons are in the Marines. Well, one's out, but the other one's still in. And they're like, look, Mom, all you did was prepare us to join the Marines, because we move every 4 years. And I was like, success. See, I knew I was doing something for a reason, It's like, they laugh at it now, but it wasn't funny growing up in my home, because there's always that one person I think that maybe we may share in our story or may not. This is my story. It was that father. He became that person that I said I'd never be like. I was like, I'll never grow up be like him. And I actually did not know that he suffered from alcoholism until I got in the rooms of Alcoholics Anonymous and saw the nature of the illness. I don't think I truly hated my father, per se. I loved my father, but I hated his actions. And I only knew that after I grew up in Alcoholics Anonymous. Because when I made my amends to him, he had passed way before I got sober. I went to the gravesite, and I hated his actions, but I loved the man he was when he wasn't drinking, So out of school, like I said, 3 kids by the time I'm 24. I'm having a blast drinking, Love the bars, love disco, born and raised in South Baltimore. There's a bar on every corner in the middle of the block. It's like you didn't have to drive anywhere. You could just stagger everywhere. And we did that, And so by the time I turned probably like 25, I noticed, early on I would laugh. People were like, my kids would say, oh, look at Mom, Mom's an alcoholic. And I was like, yes, I achieved something in my life, because I never wanted to achieve anything. When you ask a kid at 5 or 6 years old what they want to be when they grow up, they don't know. They're a kid. I didn't know what I wanted to be grow up, but I figured I'd pick something like a nurse or something along, that a woman's supposed to grow up to be. I don't know. I'm 6, for God's sake. I don't know. I just want to be a kid for right now. And so, I ended up, something changed in me probably at the age of 25. I can only tell you all this in hindsight. Believe me, I am not a spokesperson for Alcoholics Anonymous. I try to live by the book and these principles to the best of my ability. I'm not perfect by any fashion of the word. I do the best I can on a daily basis. And, I'm not in charge, thank God. So I get to the end of my drunkenness, and something started changing, because my kids, I'd laugh like, yay, I'm an alcoholic, and something switched. Later in life, when I started throwing things and swiping the counter off, and Kool-Aid and stuff would go up on the wall, because my kids would just leave a mess, and I'd come home from work, and I haven't even had a drink yet, and I'd start screaming and yelling to the top of my lungs, because you just don't understand, I work all day and I gotta come home and clean up this mess and blah, 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 and I take my alcoholism out on the kids. And then they started standing in place when Mom came home. Sometimes they would even have a beer at the front door, like, here, drink this before you come in. You know, because they wanted me to, they figured that was the only thing that would calm me down, at least momentarily. So not to be, you know, I wanted to put this in a respect that I'm not proud of some of the things I've done. I brought people into my home who mentally and physically abused my children. One of them was molested in the process. You know, and you talk about giving a child back their innocence, there's no way. 9-step amends can't give a child back their innocence. You know, but thank God for this daily living of principles that the shame and the guilt that I had because of that has diminished. Because God's in charge and not me. So I remember that, you know, I started bringing people in, you know, to be free babysitting. I thought I was like noble, and I was taking them off the street because they had nowhere to live. But in the back of my alcoholic mind, I was like, well, no, they can live here for free, but they have to babysit. You know, and I would buy them beer, and they were family members, so that like a 6-pack was your way of taking care of my kids. And I started going out a lot towards the end because I had free babysitting and did not know what was going on behind closed doors in the middle of the night down the hall from me. So it was at the point where at the end of my drunkenness, this is how I lived. You know, I had a blast, like I said, loved dancing, loved everything about the bars. But towards the end of my drunkenness, I didn't even want to go to the bars anymore. I didn't even want to talk to my neighbors. I moved so much, it's like, don't even talk to the neighbors because we ain't going to be here long. You know, we'll probably be moving in 3 years. One time we moved in on the 1st of the month and out on the 30th. I was like, don't even unpack anymore because who knows what's going to, you know, I'm probably going to move you again. And then we just started going through that process to where I'm living on cutoffs, turnoffs. I don't want to be on that job because I know those people on that job are talking about me. And how do I know they're talking about me? They're over there amongst themselves and they're talking, and it's got to be about me. Because I lived in fear, paranoia. I mean, if you were just smiling, what did I do? Why are you smiling at me? You know, I was just like full of nerves by the time I got here. And I remember I would go over and say to them, who are you talking about? They're like, we're not talking about anybody, Doreen, we're just talking, but it's got to be about me, you know. So that's my mind telling me it's about you. They're over there talking about you. And then I don't want to be in that home because, you know, he makes my skin crawl and I can't stand him anymore. And those kids, they just don't listen no more. You know, they get on my nerves. So this is the way I lived toward the end of my drunkenness. I used to drive a little red Sonoma back and forth to work every day. And I used to cross through the harbor tunnel, and there's a little trestle, like a bridge that goes over the railroad tracks before you go into the tunnel. And I remember just gripping my steering wheel so hard that by the time I got to work, my nails were embedded in my hand. Because all I wanted to do on a daily basis was to turn that wheel and go over that bridge. But then the thought would cross my mind, well, who's going to take care of your kids, Doreen? You know, you just saw, you know, my sister just took her life about 2 years prior to me coming in the AA. And I saw the devastation my family went through, and I'm like, now how can I do something like that after I see the devastation that my sister took her life, which I've been wanting to do that for quite some time, and I can't put my family through that. You know, I watched it. And then it was like, you know, so I would grip that steering wheel, and I'd have this vision in my head of me going over the trestle, over the bridge, and then the truck crashing into the railroad tracks. And then I would feel this like sense of ease and comfort, like, thank God that's over. And then I'd visualize again myself crawling out of the window, and I would scream in my car, in my truck, get back in the truck, you're supposed to be dead. I mean, that's how much power I have. I can't even kill myself in my own vision, for God's sake. I mean, that's crazy. But it was on me every day, and I hadn't even had a drink. I wasn't a daily drinker. You know, I drank mostly at night. Do you ever drink so much that you just want to keep drinking into the next day because you never want tomorrow to come? I tried to stay awake as long as I possibly could, because if I knew I went to sleep, I'd have to get up and do it all over again. You know, and I became a drunk on the sofa at the end of my drunkenness. You know, when I would come in the door, my kids would go out the back. I had a stepson that lived with us at the time. He was 18, and he was like 6'2", 3", and about 300 pounds. And he'd sit next to me, and his foot would go a mile a minute, and he'd sit there and bite his fingernails because he never knew what kind of abuse I was going to come at him with that day. Because I would take the abuse of his attention that he was getting away because his father was giving him attention, which rightly he should have, away from my children, and he got the bulk of my alcoholism. Thank God for the 9-step amends. And he'd even give me the ultimatums going out. He said, "Mom, I love going out with you, but can you not call me names and make fun of me once you get drunk?" And I was like, "Absolutely. Give me 3 hours and I'm on him like nothing." I call him all kind of names. No good, fat. Thank God for the 9-step amends. So I remember this is what happened the night of my last drunk. I didn't know it was going to be the night of my last drunk, honestly. Just not wanting to exist. I used to hear people talk about like the thought of me wanting to take my life in my head and driving over that bridge every day. But I remember when I was 16, somebody told me that you could overdose on vitamins, and I actually read the bottle because I thought maybe I could figure out how many vitamins I need to take to overdose. It ain't on there, don't look. It was like, because I didn't want to have to wake up. I want to make sure I take the proper amount, and then again, I remember I was 16 and him broke up with me, and I'm going to kill myself because if I die, he's really going to suffer because, look what he did to me. I'm going to kill me to hurt him. He'd still go on living and I'd be dead, and he'd probably find somebody else, which he always do. He always does. So I remember I was 16, he broke up with me, and I was devastated. And I will get to the reason why I felt this way. So I'm like, I would attach myself to anything that would come along and show me any attention. And like I said, I'm not proud of half of the things I've done in my drunkenness, but I would attach myself. If you showed me attention, I immediately thought I fell in love with you and we're going to spend the rest of our life together. Well, that happened many times in my teenage years. I was like, "Oh, no, he loves me. We're going to have children. We're going to spend." It was like this Cinderella story just kept playing in my head, and that really screwed me up because Cinderella story screws a lot of kids up. I swear it does, especially women. There is no Cinderella story, but I have one today. He's my knight in shining armor. So I get to, this guy breaks me up, and I take his picture. He breaks up with me. I take his picture. I go in the bedroom. Nobody's home. I lay his picture on the bed. I'm going to cut my wrist over his. Oh my God! I could have been in a soap opera. I'm going to cut my wrist over his picture. They're going to come and see the blood splattered across the. I had it perfectly planned out. It was awesome. I visualized it so well. And I go out in the kitchen. I get myself a knife. And it's those old-fashioned rigid knives, not like these little smooth things today. It's like got the little ridges all the way down the knife. I got a set my grandmother left me when she passed. And I remember I'm standing on the bed, or not on the bed, but on the floor next to the bed, and I go to pull it, and I was like, that's gonna hurt. Yeah, and I don't like pain, so I stabbed the heck out of his picture, and I felt so much better, and I found another one. They're out there. We think we're sick. Sick attracts sick. That's what they tell me. It was just kind of like, as they explained as I started to recover, they were like, well, it's kind of like Lonely Jane trying to find Lonely John. So they come together and they bring nothing but loneliness. It's like 2 ticks and no dog. They just suck the life out of each other. And that's exactly what happened. I sucked the life out of so many men. I feel so sorry for them. I do. I'd have an amends list as long as my arm if I had to make amends to the men I sucked the life out of. It's crazy. But here's the concept of why I share that is because growing up, I thought that was love. I thought sex had everything to do with love. And my sponsor explained it to me. She said, sex, Doreen, is the byproduct of a loving relationship. It never replaces it. Blew my mind. Because I thought if I slept with you, I owned you, and you can't have anybody else for the rest of your life. That scared me. When she said that, I was like, oh my God. I had it backwards. I thought sex was love. Because I loved a lot of men. It was like, I'm not going to do a fist step, but, I loved a lot of men. So that was my concept that had to be reversed in Alcoholics Anonymous. So I get to the end of my drunkenness, and this what happens, 2 beers in the shower, because who goes to a bar without drinking first? It just doesn't make sense to me. Non-drinkers do. I found that out later. Now I know why my husband was hanging in the bar. My first husband hung in the bar and didn't drink, because he actually enjoyed being in the bar. I enjoyed drinking. It didn't matter what bar I was in. So I just, 2 beers in the shower, got my little hangover remedy for the next day, because I'm a blackout drinker and I puke all over things. So I gotta make sure that I got my blanket, I got my little towel on the bed, I got my bucket next to the bed, and I'll actually lay down and do a couple of trial runs before I get too drunk. Because if I even make it back to the bed, I want to make sure I hit that bucket, because then I got to clean the mess up, because he doesn't do anything. That's what I used to always say. He don't do nothing in this house. All he does is eat, sleep, and go to work. And I'm doing a couple of draw runs, and then got my 2 beers in the shower. Got to have somebody to take me and pick me up, because I don't drink and drive. That's what I believed. We have this delusion, as the big book describes. I don't know what your delusion is, but that was one of mine. It's like, so, oh my God, lo and behold, my oldest son just got his learner's permit. I was so proud, as the mother of an alcoholism mind could be. My heart meant well when I said, I'm so proud of you, son. But my alcoholic mind was talking to me the whole time saying, well, now you don't have to drink and drive. He can take you and pick you up. They said they had to have a coherent, a licensed driver in the car with them, but they didn't say they had to be coherent. So that boy picked up a mess that night. Many a times he picked me up, and I don't remember getting home. The first time he picked me up, he says, Mom, where are we going? I'm like, I don't know, because I knew I was going out. I knew I was blacking out. I said, I'm sorry, honey, you got to find your own way home. And he did. And it was pouring down rain. That's love for an alcoholic. And it does affect the whole family. Don't think it doesn't. That's my experience. So as usual, here's how alcoholism affects the whole family. That was his thought too. Don't worry, Mom. You won't have to drink and drive. I'll take you and pick you up. So 2 beers and off we go. I blacked out 3 times that night. I remember waking up in a bar singing karaoke next to my sister's friend, and I was like, oh, okay. So I started singing, Then I blacked out again. I woke up at another bar, and I was doing the electric slide in the opposite direction of everybody else, and of course they're doing it wrong. I'm the only one going the wrong way, but they're all doing it wrong. And a fight broke out, and my sister grabbed me off the floor, and she said, sit down here, because I was so inebriated that I couldn't stand. You ever just get to the place where your body's like, okay, I'm done. And your mind's like, no, you're not. Let's go. We still got some more drinking to do. And my body's like, nope, I'm done. And you just fall all over the place. Your body's already ready to go back home and go to bed, but your mind's like, I'm wide awake. We got some more drinking to do. So I remember waking up again the 3rd time, and I'm standing in the middle of this city block in South Baltimore, and my sister-in-law is ahead of me where the door is back there. And I was like, because I looked around, I was like, where's Debbie? And then they're like, there she is. I was like, Debbie, wait up. She said, run. She said, because she had to go to the bathroom. We were heading back to her house that night after the bar closed. So I took off running. Now, I just explained to you what I was like on that dance floor, falling all over the place, bumping into people, going in the opposite direction. My body was just like, let's lay down. And my head's like, nope, we're awake. We got to keep going. So I took off running, and in South Baltimore, where the curbs are, they take out the grooves now where, wheelchairs can get up and down the sidewalks. Well, I hit that full force, and my face bounced right across the asphalt. I went straight out. And I remember sitting up in the middle of this city block, and I reached up and grabbed my face, and I come down with a handful of blood, and my sister-in-law goes, "Oh my God, Doreen, please don't touch your face." I said, "Debbie, it can't be that bad." So we get back to her house, because see, at that point I was in the medical field, and and my thought was, well, now I got to clean the wounds, and my lip was kind of hanging off, so I shoved that back up into place, and my tooth was shaved, and oh, it was a mess. And I remember I get back to her house, and I'm sitting on the edge of the tub, and I'm pulling gravel out of my mouth and my teeth, and I'm scrubbing my knees. They were all busted up. My hands were kind of a little abrased. And she kept saying, "Oh my God, Doreen, please don't touch your face." I said, "Debbie, it can't be that bad." She said, "Look." There she is. Thank God. I don't know what your last night was like, but I hope if there's anything I can give anybody in this room tonight is that experience. I saw myself for the first time. And I remember I looked at myself in that mirror that night, and I said to myself, "Look what you've done to yourself this time, Doreen." I wasn't laughing anymore. I had fallen many times in my drunkenness, but I wasn't laughing anymore. The laughing had stopped way before that. But I finally saw me for the first time. And I didn't realize this till I was probably about 15 years sober, that I didn't realize that night I did a first step, because I quit blaming. I didn't say, "Oh, look what he did to you," or "Look what those kids did to you." I said to myself, "Look what you did to yourself this time," because I blamed everybody up to that point. Every single person that crossed my path. It has to be your fault the way my life has turned out. But that night, I was faced with the truth, and I've been sober ever since. And I saw those eyes. They were black as coal. I remember on my driver's license, it used to say eye color. I put dark brown, because there was no window. There was no light in that window that night. And I went and called a member of Alcoholics Anonymous, who was my brother. Like I said, I tried to avoid him for 4 years because I didn't want this stuff to rub off on me. They say the only thing that rubs off in an AA meeting is rigor mortis and death, so have at it. There's a pamphlet out about that. Read it. It's called A Member's Eye View. And I remember I called him, and my sister-in-law answered the phone, and I said, "Can I talk to him?" Well, I'm not going to give his name because I don't break people's anonymity. And I was like, "Can I talk to him?" And she goes, "Your sister's on the phone." He likes to call it the alcoholic hour, because anytime in the family somebody wants to somewhat quit drinking, they call my brother 4 o'clock in the morning. He calls it the alcoholic hour. He said, "My phone rings 4 o'clock in the morning. Somebody in the family wants to get sober, and we got a lot of family that need to get sober." So he gets, he does what we are supposed to do. He came over, and he brought that big book, and he was sitting across from me. I remember in the living room, and he kept reading out of that big book, and he did exactly what I hope all of us, I know I do at times. He laid that sister aside, and it was one alcoholic talking to another alcoholic. And he read from that big book. And he took me to my first 2-week meetings of Alcoholics Anonymous. And he kept saying, "Doreen, you need to get a sponsor, you need to do these steps." And all I started hearing was, wah, 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 wah. Because I wasn't like you people yet. I had a home, 5-bedroom home, mind you. I would tell people, I got a 5-bedroom house. I got 3 cars in that driveway. Now it's all leaving, but I ain't gonna tell you that. I got 3 kids. I got a car. I got a husband. I have a dog. I can't be an alcoholic. I got stuff. I got diamonds on my fingers still. When my sponsor first saw the diamonds, she goes, "Doreen," she said to the other people we traveled with, "Doreen ain't staying. She's got hockables." Now remember, I was born and raised in South Baltimore. We had hockables. I hadn't got to that depths of my drunkenness, but I fell on the inside a lot quicker than I fell on the outside. So my brother kept taking me to my meetings. He kept saying, get a sponsor, do these steps. Women were giving me their numbers, and I respected that. But I was going home throwing them away, because I'm not like you people yet. August 9th, 98, I asked my brother for help. I heard somebody share in a meeting something about 90 and 90. Or then I heard somebody say, well, go to as many meetings as you drink. Well, I don't drink on Tuesday, so I'm going to stay home Tuesday. I started weeding out AA one day at a time. I started going backwards. One day at a time. Well, I never really drank that much on Thursdays. I think I'll stay home Thursday night. I had no sponsor, no direction. Me left with me without God and the 12 steps is a danger zone. Danger zone. So I remember backing up. You know, then I heard 90 and 90. So it was getting close to 90 days. I remember this as well as anything. I hope I never forget. I remember it was November 15th. My brother's sponsor kept telling me he was doing this meeting right up the street from where I was living at the time. He said, I swear I'm going to be there. He told me twice. I showed up, he didn't. I didn't know what a resentment was, but I was really getting upset with him. I didn't know what a resentment was when I got here, because see, I'm from South Baltimore. They don't use words like resentment in South Baltimore. They just get angry at people. I understood that. I was angry at a lot of people. And then I remember I'm like in my shower that night, and I felt good, and I want to share this with you. The meetings definitely served purpose in my life for that first 90 days because it kept me coming back. You know, I enjoyed the fellowship. I enjoyed being around people. You know, I love the spirit in these rooms. But that alone won't keep me sober. Because I'm standing in my shower close to 90 days. I didn't know where that information come from. And I was like, well, maybe I'll stay, you know, I've never stayed sober 90 days in my entire drunkenness. Why not? I'll try it. So I'm at like day 89. And I'm starting to get miserable. He's starting to make my skin crawl again. Those kids just ain't listening anymore. Those people at that job are talking about me again. And I'm in my shower, November 15th, 1998, and I'm crying. The bottom and the pit of my soul. God help me, I can't do this anymore. I can't keep going to these AA meetings and put on my happy little AA face like everything's okay because I want to drink so bad it's scaring me to death. I'm talking every fiber of my being was screaming, drink, Doreen, you never really drank wine that much. Go have a drink. I thought that was AA, just hanging out in the rooms. And that's it, not drinking, not drinking. I could have blew my brains out. Thank God it only lasted 90 days for me. Because when I showed up at that meeting that night, I met this woman prior, and I remember her standing up in the meeting and sharing, it was an announcement, but I didn't hear her say she was an alcoholic. But I knew her because we both grew up in South Baltimore together, and we would cross paths in our drunkenness, family knew family. You know, we went to the same schools. You know, it was like we grew up in that environment. Her home life was the same as my home life growing up. So we were very parallel in all the stuff that, other than she had gone a little further in her drunkenness than I did. And I remember I showed up that night that I wasn't showing up at. And I'm standing, walking up towards the church doors, and I looked up, because I wasn't looking up at anybody early in my recovery. I was a shoe inspector. That's what they call us, shoe inspectors. Because if I look at you, then you can see a side of me, and ain't nothing but dirt and darkness in there. And I can't tell anybody about that. I got to put my little happy AA face on, like, I'm fine. You know what fine means? I'm not going to share from a podium, but I'll tell you afterwards. I respect this group. So I remember I walked up, and she's standing there right in front of it, like in the walk space. And I was like, oh my God, what are you doing here? She said, I don't know, because I just did this meeting 2 weeks ago. And I've never done a meeting that close in mine. She was sober 7 years when I met her. She said, I've never done a meeting that close together in all my sobriety. But now I know why she was there. I cried out to God that night. I asked my brother August 9th, but it wasn't until I was near 90 days sober that I asked God for help. And she showed up. And you'll hear a lot of old timers, and you can take it for what it's worth, but in my experience, It is life-changing. She showed up that night, and then they always tell me that when the student's ready, the teacher will appear. And I was very teachable. I had no questions. She said, get in the car. I got in the car. I didn't say what meeting we going to because I didn't know anything about what meetings were in the area because this is my first time in Alcoholics Anonymous, you know? And I showed up. She was talking about God and the 12 steps like I had never heard it in that first 90 days. I'm not saying they weren't sharing the same experience, but I had never heard it then. I needed to fall again. I fell August 9th, but I had to fall deeper within the spirit of my soul in order to receive the message of Alcoholics Anonymous. Because that night I heard her talk about God, the 12 steps, and sponsorship like I had never. I get cold chills. And you know what saved my life? It wasn't so much about all the wording and stuff that we hear or read from a podium. She talked about being a shell of a woman. And she said because of those 3 things, she stood comfortable in her own skin. And I looked up and I was like, that's what I want. I want comfort in my own skin. That was the language of the heart. That's the true Alcoholics Anonymous message. The language of the heart. When she talked about being a shell of a woman, and I heard her story because she had to share all 12 steps. She had gone much further than I had gone. But that wanting comfort in my own skin sold me on Alcoholics Anonymous. And I remember I had a temporary sponsor. I don't know what that is. I'm just sharing that's what they said it was back then. Well, Joe says what a temporary sponsor is. He says the name and the number in case somebody like me will come up to you and say, you got a sponsor? You flash the card, say, yeah, here it is, Mary. Look at it. Don't call her, because I don't, but just here. Look at Mary. Here's Mary's number. That's funny. I ain't calling her. Like I was throwing them away, so I didn't know that you're supposed to keep them and flash them at people. I just went home and threw them away. So that was part of the journey of getting to Alcoholics Anonymous. That's what it was like, and that's what happened. Let me share what it's like now. This has been a growing up process. I came to you on August 9th, 1998. I was 37 years old. That makes me 57 today. And I have never felt so young. I have nothing. I'm not in charge of anything. I have peace within myself. I am comfortable in my own skin. I can go anywhere, as that book describes, on God's green earth. Okay. Today. Now that might change tomorrow. I'm only sharing today because that's been my experience today. I've been okay with me today. And I've been okay with you too. And my husband, that's amazing because I'm usually not okay with him. He just won't do what I want him to do half of the time, and it really upsets me. But he's happy about not doing what I want him to do. So it doesn't upset him, it upsets me. No, I'm just kidding. I love him with all my heart. And it has nothing to do with sex. We actually dated. That blew my mind. I fell into bed. I never fell into love. I would fall into bed. It looked like love. And we actually dated for over a year before we had sex. That's crazy. Because I have this lady that we listened to. It was a conference back in the day. And she said, she said, if you ever want to find your husband, just turn me over. He's probably there. I was like, I love her. I wish I could have put it so plainly. It's like, you ever want to find me, honey? Just turn some guy over. I'll probably under him. Not today. I'm talking back in the day. I can make light of it today, but believe me, thank God for the 9-step amends, because I could have brought home so many things. I could have brought home angry people who could have caused damage to my home and my family life. I could have brought home diseases that I could have affected my whole family in doing situations like that. I've placed myself in positions where I could have got raped and I could have got killed. I should be dead. That's why I enjoy life the way I do. My sponsor says, the depths of you take the depths of the despair that you bring to Alcoholics Anonymous, and that will be the heights of your joy. And I'm flying, baby, because I was dead when I got here. So I ain't got nowhere else to go but up. Wanting to die on a daily basis is as bad as it's going to get. Joe says it today, and I don't know if you're ever going to hear Joe's story, but I'll share some of it. He don't mind. You know, he used to always... here's one thing that that stands out a lot of the, and it's probably not his, he stole it from somebody else, because nothing's original in AA. We always steal it from somebody else. He used to always say, you know, the healing starts, Doreen, when the blaming stops. And that's in any life situation, it recovered or not. When I continue to blame, the problem's me. Nobody can make me feel the way I feel without my permission. I have to release that will to him. And I didn't know that. You know, my sponsor, she taught me how to live through the 12 steps of Alcoholics Anonymous. She showed me how to live this way of life. I've been in her home life. I've watched her interact with her family. I've watched her interact with her children. She came into my home, her and her husband, to talk to my family and children, just as everything is outlined in that big book she done. I thought she was so smart when I got here. And then I started reading the big book, and I was like, oh, that's where she gets that stuff from. I thought she was a genius. She's a very humble woman. Because you know why? She was willing to set her life aside to show me how to live this way of life. That's humility. Getting right size, so you don't think so much about yourself that you're able to help others live this way of life. And I remember she took me through the 12 steps, and yeah, I was raring to go. I have, what the big book describes as spiritual intoxication, I was talking about God, morning, noon, and night. I got so sick of me talking about God, I couldn't shut myself up. My sponsor even said to me one time, she said, shut up. I was like, I can't. How do you do that? How do you shut up? You know, she said, once I gave you permission to start talking, you ain't never shut up since. And I was like, hell no, I love it. I'm going to talk about it all the time. And it's not the God as what we understand it. It's the God of love and joy. And as the big book describes in the 10th step, that it is beyond our wildest dreams. You know, it talks about that God insists on us enjoying life. So if I'm not enjoying life, it ain't God's fault. That's my fault. I've disconnected myself. I think my whole purpose today on this earth, with my feet planted in earth, is to keep my heads in the clouds with Him and go tell you about it. And if you don't want to hear about it, somebody else will tell you about it. Because you come into rooms of AA, as the book describes, we're going to talk about God. The God of my understanding is love and joy. I had to set that punishing, vengeful God aside, because I could not pray to something that is evil. I couldn't pray to something that is vengeful or that is punishing. See, I remember when I was a kid, they used to say that, now I lay me down to sleep prayer. It scared me. I was like, now I lay me down to sleep. I knew I was getting to that part. I pray the Lord my soul to keep. If I should die, I look around the room before I wake. I pray the Lord my soul to take. Oh my God, He's going to kill me in the middle of the night and take my soul. I mean, I was like, I had a vivid imagination as a child. I would hunt down ghosts even though they weren't there. I would like to scare myself a lot. And I'm a horror fanatic today because of that. I love horror. I laugh at horror. My husband says with me, he goes, oh my God, that's gross. I was like, that is so funny. Look at that. And the scarier, the better. I love it. So I get this spiritual intoxication. I go out, as my sponsor tells me, okay, now you have to pass it on. I would thank her all the time. She'd say, don't thank me. You thank God. And you pass it on. Because that is my gratitude towards the people that's gone on before me. Because when it is in the 12th step, as I understand it, it says, having had a spiritual awakening, you know, we continue to set things right, you know, as we go along in 10. And I'm just jumbling them all together because I never verbatim, even at 20 years, it just comes when I need it. I'm not a big book advocate in the sense that I know all this information. I live this information. I'm not a knowledge person. So I remember just like, she's like, you pass it on. I was like, okay. I go out. You want it? Yep. Do you have a sponsor? No. Okay, well, let's go. And, you know, I was like, you go. Come on, let's go. This girl over here, she's like, I have a sponsor. I said, I don't care. You coming with me, too. I was like, I was stealing other women's pigeons. I was like, you don't want what she has, you want what I have. Let's go, you know. And I was like, piling them in my car, left and right, left and right. The one girl, I stole her pigeon right in front of her, and she was one of my sponsors. We call them pigeons in Maryland because you know what a pigeon does, right? carries the message. Ha ha, you do that. And that too, sometimes they do drops on your head. You know, and then she was like, it was two of us, my sponsor sponsored, and I met this girl one night, and she was actually one of my sponsee sister's pigeons, and I walked over to her and I was like, what are you sitting over there for? Come over here. You know, I just met her last night and I'm bringing her over here, and she didn't know what the heck to do. She's like, okay, am I supposed to go over there? So she sits down over there, and my sponsee sister goes up to my sponsor and says, Doreen, you just stole my pigeon. But I don't regret a minute of it because I love this way of life. I am more than happy to help those who are willing to travel the path with me. I will not push you. I will not pull you. I will not shove this down your throat. I will just share my experience, strength, and hope because that's all I have. That's all I have. My sponsor said if it's not the 164 pages and it's not your experience, she said it's not Alcoholics Anonymous. Don't give them advice. That's not yours. Find the experience. If you don't have it, you find that experience to somebody that does have it and you turn them in that direction. I am not in charge. You know, I have a little experiment if you don't mind playing with me. I love doing this. It blew my mind. It's a spiritual experience technique that I found this is outside AA stuff. You don't have to do it if you don't want to, but I come to find out that my whole purpose here is not only to carry the message of hope, but it's also to stay connected to my Creator. And with that, I'm able to be helpful and useful and whole. If I disconnect, I will tear you to ribbons and I will kill myself in the process. So here's one of the techniques that I was taught growing up in AA, through other literature, through my spiritual practice. So I would like you all to just close your eyes if you possibly can. And point at yourself. I want you all to point at yourself. Play along, nobody's looking. Okay. Now look where you point. Here. God enters into our hearts and our lives. Nobody went, here I am. Because my disease centers in my mind. God lives in my heart. So imagine that. When I point at myself, I always point towards my heart because that's where my higher power lives. My higher power don't go to my head at all. It says in our literature, he enters in our hearts and our lives because God knows what information's up there and he won't even tread those waters. Thanks for letting me share.
Thank you, Doreen. You're always epic. And after listening to Doreen and talk about Joe, I thought, we got to bring Joe back. I tried to get him for November 24th. We'll see if he agrees to that. We'll get him. Anyway, this is our annual Women's Month. We have 6 weeks of some amazing women that are coming in, and yeah, it's pretty cool stuff. Next week, Patty B's coming out here from York, PA. What's that group? Oh, she'll kill me. What is it?
White Rose.
White Rose Group. Oh yeah, that's not the miss event too. We got a nice way of closing. If you care to join us, we'll probably head over to Perkins after we clean up here. You're welcome to join us. If you can't afford it, don't worry, we'll cover you. And if you do want to do some service, really simple. Here's the alcoholic test. We're going to leave 7 rows deep with 5 across. Great stuff. Great stuff.